Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rocky with Father Boniface, and as you guys can tell, my voice is still a little bit shot up here. And Father, I want to talk about something that literally just happened, but can happen all the time, which is you take your mind off of whatever your focus was, direct attention to an individual, a relationship, whatever the case might be. And there are so many different elements that we all have that are our own personal traps for what can steal our attention. Maybe it's entertainment, maybe it's work, maybe it's a specific person that once they pop into your mind, you can get so diverted from what you were originally focusing on, working on, or whatever the case might be, and how it can sway you. And I know that from previous conversations that if you're not paying attention to where it's taking you, it can lead you into some really big unintended places. I was focusing on this specific problem with this person. I got a text and now I'm talking to this other person. It became 20 minutes and now I try to go back to the first situation and it's like, it's like nothing got done. Why even bother type thing. And we've all have different examples of those in our lives. But I think that this moment in time, more so than really any other prior decade, has this problem being so much more intense, personalized, and instant than ever before. These phones are algorithm to you to know what'll take your attention. They will buzz instantly. Part of your brain knows there's a shiny object there or something in which you want to go do. And I wanted to use this episode to discuss the importance of not just recognizing this flaw problem, or I don't even know if it's flawed, this condition of humanity, and how to address it and move forward with life. Because we see people who are all scattered all over the place, and there's a natural, you shouldn't be like that. You should be able to focus. And we also know simultaneously how hard that is. So that's why I wanted to use this episode to dive into that reality of our current moment.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes the current time challenging is the immediate accessibility. You mentioned text messages, email, and I suppose if people had to come physically to talk to you and they showed up and saw there are 35 people in line, they sort of self-select out.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody sends you an email, they can't see that there are 35 people in line. And so they send the email anyway, and that becomes 36. And all of those people is, of course, has all of their own things. And so as you start to deal with one, deal with another, then you find yourself going down, a cascade of different activities in those different directions. And it's very easy to lose focus. And so being able to remove the overhead as much as possible of those kinds of interactions, because context switching costs a lot. And so, it sets for us to do this podcast, you've got to set a few things up, and that goes as an automatic activity for you now. I imagine you're turning this on, loading this up, sending this out, and you don't have to think about it, and that saves a lot of energy. You probably even think about other things while you're doing it. But if you get interrupted in the middle, now you have to think about it. You got to think about where you were and what the next step is in the process is, and you've got to kind of reboot this automated, personal program or whatever it is in order to complete the thing that you were doing. And so the more that we get interrupted by things, the more that we're doing that reset, and the more that's costing us to do that. So we have to be real careful about that. That requires a lot of discipline, depending on how many balls we're juggling at the same time, or depending on how many contexts we might have to switch from. So that's I think those who are taking on more responsibility and perhaps diverse responsibilities, those who are moving up in a company or moving up in an organization, are those who have figured out how to handle that, to not make too many context switches, to become more efficient in the way that they spend their time, to delegate things properly, and not to get derailed by every interruption. So that's not all of us need to be CEOs of companies, because if there's only CEOs, then nobody's doing the work, right? But that would be a difference. But somebody who might be at a lower sounds worse somehow, but anyway, at a closer to the ground, more at the work level in a company, should hopefully have less irons in the fire, and so the little interruptions and things like that may also make it easier to start up or to restart certain processes, or maybe they're even doing smaller kinds of work that don't require as much sustained focus across maybe many steps in a task. So, but anyway, I think, to go back to the first point, are we more susceptible to that kind of cascade of work interrupting our workflow in these days than we were in the past? And my guess would be that the instant access, and then also the breadth of customers and things like that, how different that is than when you have people physically showing up. The dynamics change pretty significantly when you add that distance dimension to it.
Yeah, from both sides, certainly. I mean, think about it. If you were going to go to drive someone, normally you would come prepared, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. You'd be thinking about what you're going to talk about them, or prepared and bringing something or whatever. You get an alert in your phone that just says, "Hey, it's 11 o'clock. Come buy Big Mac." You're getting a lower message to you because the preparation for it wasn't as much. Or just think about some of the texts that get sent back and forth. Like, that really needed to actually happen. And I bring this up for, we can see tangibly, I was supposed to get this done. I got sidetracked. I didn't think it's done. But what we don't see is the additional setbacks that, had we gotten this done on time, where this relationship could have grown and blossomed to. And I want to point this out even further, in that we see those where there's still indicators coming at us that you missed something. Like, there's a text that you missed. That's not how our relationship with God works. There's a couple apps out there that will text you, but you have to actively go out and seek them. God isn't blowing up your email. God isn't going to be texting you and all that. You have to go out and seek him in a way that is completely contrary to this world, in terms of unplugging yourself and disconnecting yourself and putting yourself in your own personal space to interact. And I bring this up because those that exercise that skill of being able to be comfortable while being unplugged, being able to put themselves in a place where they communicate with God, tend to have less intense things to pull them away, or less of an urge to get pulled away by the latest text message that comes in their phone or latest email that appears. And they can be more centered, and then having it really be fixing this skill set that leads to a lot of compounding better relationships. So I bring this up as one of many benefits of building a deeper relationship with God, but using this as an example to express that. So yeah, I wanted to let you continue off.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Just your statement, God is not going to blow up your email. I think it is worth making a distinction about the kinds of communication that God has with us. When we talk about the 10 Commandments, when we talk about the moral law, there is a way that he blows up our email. It's like he reveals the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai in smoke, thunder, fire, and lightning. It's like he does know how to speak loudly. And until we silence our conscience and corrupt it in certain ways, we are sensitive in a loud way. Little children feel badly when they hurt another little child, and
Mhm.
face that. I mean, sometimes they're, and anyway, we all have our defense mechanisms even at that age, but basically, starting as little children and going on into adulthood, when we hurt someone, when we do something malicious against the 10 commandments, we do have, if our conscience again is not numbed, it is loud, and that is God's voice also speaking to us in the echo of our conscience. So there's a way that in those areas he can be loud for us. But your point, which is I think also where our listeners are, I just like to make that distinction. When it's the little nudges and the little moments of guidance in life, when it's the little ways of building that relationship and deepening intimacy with him, when it's those ways of sharing our hearts, sharing our pain, sharing our struggles, sharing our dreams, then you're right. We've got to reach out to him normally. Now, he breaks into our lives in lots of different ways when we don't expect, giving us a little grace, drawing our attention to something, waking us up in different ways. He does surprise us in different ways, um, but the things of the world tend to be a lot louder. Things of the world tend to be more blowing up email, for example, and getting our attention a little bit more drastically than God does.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important things to recognize is that God does want to reach out to you. It's not that it's it's a one-sided conversation. And I think that is one of the things that can really be lost because you're using the term numbing. One of the ways in which we get numbed is your brain just runs out of space. You're so on edge, maybe be the right terminology, maybe the wrong terminology, but you're so pulled in so many directions that do you even get a chance to really focus on hearing yourself think? Using one of your initial examples here, you get so used to your routine, you start thinking about other things during your routine. And yeah, I'm going through and I'm setting up the software we're using to record this show, etc. Like even today, I forgot to send you the link for it. So it's like these things can happen and you don't realize it until there's a problem. And I look around society and see so many different, I don't know if it's symptoms or causes that people are saying that life is not the way that ideally I want it. I mean, quite frankly, you turn on any live event, you see 500 different pill commercials. For those are from physical ailments, but they're all different elements that show that there's something pulling in a way that we shouldn't. We're not putting focus in where it ought to be. There's a off balance. The recentering is required. Whatever this terminology is, and I apologize if I just went down a cliche route there, but it's all true. When you unnumb yourself and you're focused upon your relationship with God, other things kind of shift back the way they want to be rather than trying to force them the way that you think they ought to be, because there's a chance maybe the way that they should be is good. And you just don't like whatever color the wall is painted. So you're trying to redo the whole thing. And I feel like I see that a lot in society and various different elements.
Yeah, as we start to listen to our conscience, the thing is, there is a harmony, there is a melody, there is a symphony that's playing through creation. We hear in John's Gospel, in the beginning was the Word, and through him all things were made. And that word is a harmonious word, a beautiful word, a good word. That word is what um, it's the melody beneath everything else, and all things are made through that. When things start to get off, again, think of a symphony. If one instrument is off by a little bit, it grinds everything else. And there's a way that tuning instruments, I always love that at the beginning of a symphony when all of the instruments tune, and there's this just beautiful harmonious sound that melds together from a little bit of dissonance at first, and then as it tunes to itself, just something beautiful emerges from that. And so that's how when we retune our instrument, when we retune our lives, our behaviors, when we retune our hearts according to that divine symphony that is playing through the word is playing, and we have access to him through the Holy Spirit. When we tune our lives to that, things start to fit into place. We start to notice things, to thrive in certain ways. We feel like we're fulfilling our purpose, and things that are hard become meaningful in a way that helps us to endure them. We start to love more fully and love more broadly, and then all of that works better. It's one of the ironies. The business world is always sort of stealing in some way the wisdom of Christianity, discovering that when you do things like actually care for the marginalized, oh, look, something happens there. And then it gets turned into a PR thing, and we try to commoditize a lot of Christian wisdom. But the point is that things do work better when we actually live like Christ. And
yes, they do.
You can't fake that, and you can't merely extract the principles from the person. You can only really live like Christ if you know him and love him. But there are certain ways we can imitate, at least from the exterior, and we see the concrete benefit of that. Not always immediately, sometimes a little bit more long-term, and all those kinds of things happen. But the point is, and that's where the proposal of Christianity is like, try it, take the risk. There's lots of good evidence. You're not making it's not a rash risk. It's not a it's well tested and proven. Take the risk. Try to live like Christ. Try to conform your life to him. Try to reorder some of the places where we've all become disordered, and so that's why we always have to keep hearing the gospel, either directly from the scripture or through people like me and you, or other podcasts or other books, theologians, spiritual authors, or anybody else who's even presenting humanity in an authentic way. Someone like a Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or something like that. There's a lot of wisdom that comes through that. In any event, we can really take in and transform our lives and discover the real benefits. But now we have to take the first steps with that.
Yeah, it's something that's, if you integrate Christ into your world, it comes out in many different ways. Just as pretty much anything else, whatever you put in eventually comes out. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's just what part do you want to envelop and focus upon, and integrating the gospels into a business is not easy, but it is incredibly fruitful, especially when you do it in a meaningful way in which it is intended. So again, we thank everyone for listening with us here today. If you have not done so already, please leave a star review on whatever platform you are listening. And if you'd spend a couple of extra seconds on leaving that optional written review, it makes a tremendous difference. So thank you all for listening, and we will be with you again next week.